afternoon. We are thrilled to welcome all of you to the White House for a conversation about childcare, why it's important, the problems families are facing finding it, and what we're going to do about it. So I know that you each have personal stories to tell, and the bulk of what we're going to be doing today is really listening to you about that. And I just want to thank you in advance for agreeing to come, to share your stories, to share your children, most importantly. And to all those who are listening, thank you as well. So to start it off, I'd like to just turn it right over to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary Becerra.
Jen, thank you very much. I know you're going to follow me with some remarks, but we're really here for the parents and the stars. So as the head of Health and Human Services, who would have the responsibility to make sure that expanding child care opportunities are made available to parents like those we have here, but more importantly, kids, I think it's important to point out a couple of things. We can't take this for granted, that it's going to happen. And most of us understand that quality child care, whether it's you or someone you hire, is not cheap. It is not easy to find. And today, with the pandemic, even more difficult. And so I think it's important to remember a couple of things. I guess Frederick Douglass, one of America's great leaders, said it probably best about 160 years ago. He said, better to build strong children than to repair broken men. And what you see right now in front of you are strong children. We don't want to have to worry about repairing them because we didn't do what we needed at the beginning of their life. And so President Biden has made a commitment. We're going to make sure we build strong children. And one of the ways we do that is through child care. Today it's not very affordable for too many families, and it's too difficult to find good child care. We want to change that. The President's Build Back Better agenda does exactly that. The parents you see here today will be the direct beneficiaries at the end of the day. It's the strong children who become leaders that will benefit the most. And so we need to get past those days when it was about just getting by, you barely made ends meet. No, it's about building a strong foundation, a solid foundation for your children. And I'll close by saying one thing. As a parent of three daughters, as the son of immigrants who oftentimes had to work, so I was a latchkey child growing up, and as the first in my family to go to college, and then finally as a caregiver of my father in his last years of life, I will tell you that there's nothing more important than caring for the one you love. And so it is time to make it possible for everyone to do that. Jen, thank you for having us, and I know we're going to hear some great stories in just a moment.
Yes. Thank you, Secretary Becerra, for sharing that context in your own personal story and why care is important to you. If we want to support working parents, working families in the workplace, we have to ensure that they have access to quality, accessible, and affordable child care, which gives them the confidence that their children are safe and well taken care of. And it's critical to families' economic security, but of course it's also critical to our economy and to our competitiveness. I work on women's issues here at the White House. It is obviously a women's issue, but it is so much bigger than a women's issue. It's an economic issue. It's an issue of how we raise our kids and how we prepare our citizens for the future. So Karma, let me turn to you for a bit to talk about the plans that we have and how we plan to address child care, and then we'll turn to all of you for your stories.
Thanks so much, Jen, and thanks, Mr. Secretary. It's an honor to work with both of you on these issues, and your leadership has been so tremendous on this issue and so many issues important to children and families. Like you, I'm the child of immigrants, and my parents had to work shifts to make it work. They're both working parents. As a mother of two daughters, even my daughters are much older than your kids, so they're all grown up. But even back then, it was very difficult for me to find high-quality care. And we know families are struggling. The cost of child care for many, many Americans is over $10,000 just for one child, never mind multiple children. As the Secretary was noting, in many cases, it costs more than a college tuition, but yet families don't have decades to save for it. It's a challenge it's an economic kitchen table issue that families are struggling. It's also critical to our children's development, as the Secretary pointed out. keep our economy going, as Jen said. Well, before the pandemic, this was an issue, but I think one of the things that the pandemic brought home is for so many people just how critical it is to keeping our economy going. But this is an issue that's near and dear to all of our hearts, but it's also near and dear to the president's heart. So that's why it's not surprising that he has made this a cornerstone of his economic policy agenda. It's obviously a critical early childhood education issue, but it's also critical to our economy, and he's recognized it as such. That's why when he came into office, he was able to secure almost $40 billion to stabilize the sector. We saw child care providers struggling mightily during the pandemic, and thanks to his leadership and the leadership of the secretary, we're now getting money into the hands of child care providers so they can pay child care workers to come to work, make sure those environments are safe, but also keep the doors open because parents are relying on them so heavily. But the president recognizes that that's a start, but there's so much more we need to do, which is why he's laid out this very exciting policy agenda to transform our system of early care and education. He would cut costs, child care costs in half for most families, ensure that all our 3- and 4-year-olds have access to high-quality preschool, and also make sure that our providers are paid what they deserve to be paid and able to keep their doors open. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jen so we could talk to these families that we have with us, and we're really, really grateful that you're taking the time to do this. We see how busy you are, so. Yeah.
Described yourselves as tag team parents. Tell us a little bit more about what that means in your house and how you have balanced child care needs.
Yeah, we use that term because from the time Henrik is the youngest, and we have 2 older children that are ages 10 and 7. And so we realized early on that full-time child care was well beyond our reach. And we realized that we needed to come up with a different system. So when his brother and sister were older, my husband worked during the day, and I worked at nighttime, completing pediatric sleep plans after he came home from the office. And then when Henrik was a baby, my husband's shift changed and he was working nights, which is when I was able to go back to the office during the day. But it was still exhausting and grueling to consistently be tagging out and always being on shift. You're either at work or you're with the children, and it took a toll on all of us because it's hard to be present and be the parent that you want to be when you're with them, when you're so tired and when you're worried about making ends meet. So we really need government to invest in child care and make it affordable, reliable, accessible to families, because I would have been able to get back to work a lot sooner if accessible child care was a reality for us. And Build Back Better can reach that, can start to fix that, the struggles that so many families are going through. I realized that so many friends and neighbors were going through the exact same thing, and unless you had grandparents who were close by and willing to watch your child while you worked, or family, everyone was either paying a second mortgage to send their child to child care or daycare, or the parents had to come up with these acrobatic ways to work on a 24-hour basis in order to care for their kids and to make ends meet at the same time. So we're struggling, and we really need government to come and lend us a hand.
Thank you, thank you. Jessica, I'm going to turn to you because you have similarly, I think, been trading off childcare shifts
Yes.
with you and your husband. So again, tell us about how you shoulder the responsibility for childcare in your house.
Yeah. So this is my 7-year-old. She's my oldest, and we also have a 2-year-old at home, and we do the exact same thing. We have shifts. My husband, I have like a regular 9 to 5 job, and my husband has to be very flexible, and so he does a lot of sort of independent contracting work at odd hours. And it's the same situation, like when my daughter asked me why we were coming to Washington and what we were going to be talking about, I said to her, you know how when mommy's working, daddy is with you, and when daddy is working, mommy is with you, and your brother, and we're not able to spend a lot of time together as a family. And she's very familiar with this. She's constantly asking for all of us to do things together as a family. Her and myself and her brother and my husband, we're simply not able to really do that very often because of our work schedule.
Do you want to share anything yourself? Tell us. We didn't plan this. I'm putting you on the spot. So you can just say, no, thanks, not right now.
Yeah, you think you would
Yeah, I like to go to daycare.
like after
Yeah, I want to do
school?
aftercare, but my parents can't pay for it, and that's why we're never like doing like family.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Allison, that is the perfect segue to you. Tell us how you afford childcare.
Very expensive for a lot of families, including ours. We pay more than $2,000 a month. It's more than our mortgage, like a lot of families. We are fortunate that we're in an income that we're able to afford it, but it does make us make some difficult choices. My son has an IEP and he needs speech therapy and occupational therapy, and we have to take time away from our jobs to be able to take him to those therapies that he needs in order to be in childcare and thrive. And a lot of families can't make that choice. And I think of every time I take my son to speech therapy, I think how many kids are being missed right now. It worries me that when he enters kindergarten, so much of his classroom will not be prepared to be there. In Virginia alone, 1 in 3 children are living in poverty. And it worries me so deeply because I wonder what will happen to those children. For our family, we make choices every day about not doing things, and when we're looking at how much we're spending on groceries, we're things that we didn't necessarily think about so deeply before, but we do now.
And Sean, I'm going to turn to you next. I know that your daughter, or COVID arrived shortly after your daughter arrived. Olive is 3, 2?
Olive's almost 23 months, so she was born right after COVID.
Okay. So what motivated your search for childcare? What were you looking for? What did you find? What didn't you find? And sort of how have you managed during COVID?
Sure, yeah. So my wife and I had always planned on putting Olive into daycare from a very young age. We see the benefits of early literacy building and social emotional learning and just being able to interact in a community of children. And as 2 people that wanted to work full-time and build a family, we saw ourselves putting Olive into daycare early. Once COVID was a reality, we ended up putting that on the back burner for about a year. We pieced together childcare with the help of family and a part-time babysitter, and my wife and I would do a lot of the juggling that you heard about from the folks here today, until around August when it was just evident that Olive really needed to be in a supportive environment for young kids. And at that point, we found a daycare situation for her, and she went into daycare. And then we were met with the realities. Thank you. We were met with the realities that daycare was going to close frequently due to COVID outbreaks. So once we got her into daycare, there were a lot of questions as to whether or not we could depend on daycare to be there when we needed her to be cared for. At that time, we weren't sure whether or not there was going to be any reimbursement for tuition, and I know for a lot of families there isn't. And then just, my wife and I having to scramble to replace that child care at the last minute.
So I guess anyone or all of you can jump in. I'm just sort of trying to envision the world where you have affordable, quality childcare, and sort of take us into your lives for a sec and describe what changes, what does that mean for you and your family?
It would alleviate a lot of stress. It would immediately result in more family time, being able to spend time together. And it would also afford my husband more opportunities to work a job and a shift that he would like to, which would help. It would just help the entire ecosystem of our family.
And do you live in a place where there's where there are existing childcare options and they're difficult to afford, or is there, a need for additional childcare options?
All of the above. There's definitely, we need more options, and it is also extremely expensive. Like you were saying, more than our mortgage. When we looked into it, especially for our little one, our 2-year-old, it was hundreds of dollars per month in our mortgage. No.
For our family and a lot of families, I think that we would be able to choose to put our children in maybe better childcare settings than we can currently afford. Or for me, I would be able to put my son into therapies over the summer when the school system doesn't provide them. I do worry already, okay, is he going to lose everything that he's learned when the school shuts down for the summer? And I think we would be able to put more into our retirement fund. I think one of the things when you said that, the first thing I thought was, as a woman, when you are announced to your job that you're expecting a child, people around you are sort of like, are you going to continue to work? I don't think men get asked that question. The childcare workforce is often backed by women, especially women of color. And my childcare provider puts so much love into my son and the children in his childcare settings, and they don't make enough money. Every day I tell them, I wish I could give you so much more money that you deserve for the impact that you're making in my child's life. But families can't afford to pay more, but they absolutely deserve more.
Yeah, you're so right. You pointed out really two facets. The first is what people need, mothers need to be able to get into the workforce, and that is adequate childcare for their families, but also what we are doing for childcare providers, which is why the president feels so strongly about investing in improving their jobs as well, which both improves the quality of care and also obviously thank you, improves their lives, the quality of child care workers' jobs. Thank you so much.
You're enjoying some sensory toys that Carrie brought.
Yeah, these are pretty cool, actually.
Daniela, did you want to?
Yeah. Thank you.
More?
Thank you so much for asking this question. Okay, speak up more. Okay.
Yeah.
To have access to reliable, quality child care that would not cost a family an arm and a leg would be a complete game changer. When the child tax credit was enacted, we not only used it to pay for summer activities for the kids for a little bit. But we also started sending Henrik to preschool in the fall, which was the first time that he had attended preschool, in part because it was extremely difficult to find and afford, but also because of COVID. And he's been doing so wonderfully. He's started to read, write his own name, he's cooperating with friends, he's just matured, and it's really been wonderful for him as a kid, and I know it's going to be wonderful for his future. And because of all that he missed before, we started to speak with the teachers in 2021 in December about him staying 1 year longer in preschool rather than start kindergarten right away, just for maturity. And but now that the child tax credit's been taken away, I don't think that we can make this a reality anymore for him. And I know so many people that now that that benefit's been taken away, that they're making even tougher choices than they were before. So when I think about sometimes what is happening in Congress, I get very deeply offended with any member that would say that our family or families like mine would use this benefit for drugs or luxuries or anything other than to do what we already do, which is work so hard to provide this next generation with what they need to take our country forward. It is very saddening, and it makes us feel very abandoned, which is why we're here today. Thank you.
Sean, I feel that you are nodding vociferously. Share.
My nods are for an overwhelming ditto across the board. But I also learned something. My wife and I spend $1,500 a month on Olive's daycare situation, and what I'm learning right now is that's not even as high as it goes. But the one important thing that I want to bring that maybe hasn't been discussed yet is just the impacts on family planning. Like we would like to have another child, but it's part of our conversation every time we talk about it, whether or not with daycare at the prices that it is, whether or not it's economically feasible for us to have another child and put that child into daycare, because like I said earlier, we're committed to our jobs full time. And if not, what are the benefits or what are the risks that we're taking by not giving Olive a sibling?
Hey, Barry. Good
Thanks for sharing that. Secretary Becerra, did you want to jump in? I know you had some questions for these families as well.
Yeah, I would. An interesting point is I think people forget that by the time our kids reach Lana's age, their brain's 90% developed. And so if they're going to be the inquisitive leaders of tomorrow, it's because they had a chance to do it when they were young. And I'm hearing distress stories from parents saying, I don't know how I'm going to have my child get the access to quality care that they need, paying $1,500, $2,000, $1,000 a month. That's tuition in a private school from the age of what, 2? I don't know how many people think about that as they get ready to start having children. And I think what you're saying to us is it's not just a matter of helping you afford the care, it's getting these kids ready to be the strong children that become the leaders of tomorrow instead of repairing, as Frederick Douglass said, the broken men. I did have a question though. When you do have access to good quality care, when you know your child is with someone good, does that give you peace of mind?
Oh, without question. And even in the few months that Olive's been in daycare, we've seen her in very supportive, very well-structured classrooms that have great schedules, circle time, early literacy building. And then we've seen her in some situations in some classrooms where there's less. And we have seen in about 6 months the differences in our family when we have a very strong environment for her, and then when there's one that's not as strong.
Yep.
Yes, definitely. When Lana was 4 years old, we were able to take advantage of a wonderful program in Pennsylvania for lower middle class families. And we were able to send her to a pre-K, and she absolutely blossomed as soon as she went into this pre-K. Unfortunately, it was cut short because of the pandemic. So March 2020, she was just a couple months away from graduating pre-K. But during that time, we knew that she was well taken care of, that the education that she was receiving was amazing, and that she was thriving. And it was such an amazing peace of mind. I'm looking forward to sending my son to the same spot that she went to when he's old enough. But yes, definitely.
Amen.
For me, it's the ability to. Okay, it's the ability for me to. And just,
Mommy's going to make a really important point.
for me, it's the ability to go to work and feel confident that I can do what I feel like I was born to do. I feel like I was born to advocate for children and families. And when I returned to work from maternity leave and I was able to leave my child with a safe person who I knew didn't just want to care for my children, but love them, it made me more passionate about the work that I do. And I don't feel the significant guilt that I think often comes with motherhood and working a career that we love. Instead, I see my son run into his child care center. The teachers say, "We're so happy to see you, we love you." And he gets to be around children that look like him, and it just makes a huge difference in our daily lives.
Amen.
Hi, and I love how this book is looking, and I like the picture.
All right.
Thank you, Henry. He's the same. He loves his school, and it makes such a difference to be able to drop him off, go home, and be able to focus on my work with peace of mind, knowing that he is thriving there, and knowing that we're setting him up for a future in which he's able to share his gifts and his talents with the world. So not having that, I know, is heartbreaking. Not being able to know that the child has care, or having to resort to putting the TV on or giving some sort of a device to them, because you have to complete work and you have deadlines and you have things that you need to do, but you don't have any options and you don't have care available for your child. That is really heartbreaking, not being able to be there for them and not having someone that can be there for them when you have important work to do.
Carmel, did you want to say anything as we get to close?
Well, I guess just one topic that we brushed upon, but just for all of you, it seems like being able to afford care is a big challenge, but then the other piece is finding it. So if you have any more to share with us about the struggles there, we know a lot of Americans live in what we call child care deserts, where it's just not there. And part of that is because we need to give families the resources they need to pay for high quality care, and then bring the providers in. But we'd love to hear any additional thoughts you have about that, kind of the supply side of the issue.
Thank you. In Virginia, there are many child care deserts. When I had my daughter, who is 10 months old, pretty much before we decided to have a second child, I went to a provider and said, "Can you put me on a list just in case, and I'll call you if I need that slot." It's that desperate to find a quality care place. And then for my son, when I wanted to enroll him in preschool when he was 2, and I took him in at 18 months to get that slot. And they said, "Oh, good for you. You've got the last slot for the incoming class." That's not reality. Parents aren't thinking, I'm a type A person. Anyone who knows me knows that. I'm typically thinking a year or 2 out, but most parents aren't thinking about that. I've already have my daughter, who is 10 months old, on a list for when she turns 2 that she might get a slot at a school that I'd like her to go to. It's unrealistic, and the equity issue is significant for families, especially families of color. We don't have the same opportunities to attend these high quality early childhood settings that are expensive. The spaces aren't available. And what it does is it sets them up to not be on the same level playing field when they get to kindergarten.
Yeah, we actually had an opportunity. My husband had a possible job opportunity shortly before the pandemic started. And so we found ourselves in a spot looking for childcare pretty much last minute. And this was at the time for my newborn. At the time he was a newborn. And I was on the phone for about 2 days, just calling to every place that I could find online that was within like a half hour to 45 minutes from our home. And it was insane. I think I found 1 or 2 places, and they were not our first choice. They weren't very high quality, but we were ready to send him there just so that my husband could take this job opportunity. At the end of the day, he was not able to start this job, and a big factor was our childcare situation, the fact that we couldn't find something so last minute. Because like you said, I mean, you can be on a waiting list for a year or 2 in order to get into a place that you would want to send your child. So.
Did you want to add anything on that?
I don't have anything to add on this.
Okay.
I'll be happy to. Thank you so much. Yeah, throughout the babyhood of all of our 3 guys, it was impossible to find affordable childcare. And like you said, in Virginia, the availability is crazy, and parents talk to each other like, do you know anywhere? Do you know anywhere? Where are you going? Where did you find a spot? It's a very desperate situation, and it can feel very helpless a lot of the time, and it's a dual situation where the providers want to work and parents want to work, but we need the kind of government investment that will make it possible for supply and demand to align, and provide living wages for those who work in the child care facilities, and not make it impossible for families who need it to find subsidized care, which is almost literally impossible to find. Being a member of Moms Rising that helped with this event today was one of the things that helped me keep my sanity during the pandemic, working 2 part-time jobs while caring for the kids, because I realized that it was such a deep problem, and all friends and neighbors were going through the exact same thing. And Build Back Better would help all of us. So we really hope that Congress will listen to parents, listen to families, listen to child care providers, and realize that this is something that would not just help low and middle income families, but would help the entire nation. Because every time that we've invested in infrastructure, it has paid off for our country, every single time. So, thank you.
Amen.
I did want to mention one of the best things. One of the best things that's been helpful, and I would just want to say this to make sure as many families are aware of it, is if you had a baby like me in 2021, you can apply, when you file your taxes, get some of the stimulus money and the child care tax credit as a lump sum, which will help a lot of families. We had so many expenses in that first year of life, And so I'm just hopeful that more families are made aware of that opportunity for them.
Secretary Becerra, any last words?
I don't think I need this. I would simply say that we're seeing real life play out, the real life situation of families every day. I suspect Sean, Jessica, Allison, and Daniela are reflecting what so many parents today are feeling. By the way, I gotta say that, where's Olive? Olive, way over there, and Perry and Lana and Henrik have been just phenomenal. I mean, good kids, very good kids. And it's great to see if they feel comfortable. This means they're accustomed to having this type of sociability and being able to cope. And I think that's fantastic to say. What we don't often say is what Build Back Better really represents. And I think, Daniela, you were getting into it. It will be the greatest investment our country will have made in giving parents peace of mind, because they will have access to good care. It does two principal things, and I know this because our team is working in case we get that bill across the finish line. One is to make sure caregivers actually have the capacity to train up people and then pay them a decent wage. Because we could talk about good care, expanding child care access, but if you don't train up the workforce and pay them right, they're not going to come. Or they'll leave because McDonald's will pay them more. And so we need to make sure we've got quality people who, as Allison said, will tell Perry when he arrives, oh, we just love having you here, who know how to do that. Second thing the President's proposal on Build Back Better would do is actually make more slots available. So if you're not as type A planning as Allison is, you can find a spot for your child. And there is, as I said, to me it's peace of mind. When my 3 daughters were growing up, and they're all healthy adults today, it was having that peace of mind. Everyone's entitled to have that peace of mind, because everyone's entitled to grow and see their children become strong, not needing repair, as Frederick Douglass said. So I would simply say, I wish I could take all 4 of these parents to the Hill so they could advocate strongly every day to get that Build Back Better bill passed now.
Let's go.
Yeah. Amen.
And I will just end by saying, Colonel, did you want to?
No, that was perfect.
I was going to say it's so well said. I will just end by saying, just to reiterate what the Secretary said, which is what you have told us today, first of all, I fear is what so many American families across the country are experiencing. But you have put words to so many, the struggles, but also the solutions. So I want to thank you all for coming. That's why, and the other thing that I really noted as I was sitting here was COVID has made the situation worse, but the situation for families who are seeking affordable quality care existed before, and as you have so powerfully pointed out, will exist after. And that's why it was important that the President was able to pass the American Rescue Plan, which were emergency dollars to stabilize the child care industry and do all the things that the Secretary said. And that's why, Danielle, as you said so beautifully, that's why we need to pass this bill, because these are solutions that people are going to need for years to come, so that we can have many, many kids who are as fortunate as these kids, and as wonderful as they are. And I credit the child care that they have received, but I have to say I also credit their parents, who I can tell have done a great job already. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Amen.
Next.